Okay, hello again. So this is now part 3 of our discussion on trigonometric substitution. Like what I mentioned in the kicker of part 2, yung gagawin natin is to use trig sub this time for u equals some arbitrary function of x. Let's start with this example number 5. Let's find the antiderivative of this function. Pero first, let's express itong radical expression na to in a more familiar form. So the square root of 16 minus e to the 2x, if you apply laws of exponents on this one, si e to the 2x, that should be equal to e to the x quantity squared. Tama ba? So this is now the square root of 16 minus e to the x quantity squared. Now this is of the form a squared minus u squared, where your u is what? Your u is e to the x, and your a is equal to the square root of 16 or 4. Okay? So using this value of u and this value of a, let's now form our trigonometric substitution. In this case, let's let u, which is e to the x, be equal to what? In this case, you have here constant squared minus variable squared. Tama ba? And kung ganun yung form ng integrand natin, ano yung trig function involved dito? It should be sine. Okay? So your e to the x, that should be equal to 4 sine theta. Okay? So let's now use this substitution to express dx and all of this in terms of theta. Okay? So if we start with dx, anong gagawin natin? We have to integrate, or rather we have to differentiate both sides, no, of this equation here. Okay? So your left-hand side, when you differentiate that with respect to x, what do you get? So the derivative of e to the x, that's just itself, no? So you have e to the x times the differential dx. Okay? So that's your left-hand side. And that's equal to the derivative of this one. Okay? So you have 4 sa labas times derivative ng sine theta. That should give you cosine theta. Okay? So you have 4 cosine theta d theta. Okay, that takes care of dx. Let's now consider this radical expression here. So the square root of 16 minus e to the 2x, I won't show all of the computations anymore. You can verify that this is equal to 4 cosine theta. Okay? So just verify this by hand. And like what I mentioned very early in part 1, yung magka-partner ay sine theta and cosine theta, no? So they're bound to be equal here. Okay? Okay, so using all of these substitutions here, let's now replace this in terms of theta. Okay? So if you integrate this one in terms of theta ngayon, what will happen? For this one, itong square root ng 16 minus e to the 2x, di ba that's equal to 4 cosine theta? So this one, you replace that with 4 cosine theta dun sa numerator. Yung denominator, si e to the x, di ba that's equal to 4 sine theta? So this one is now 4 sine theta. Okay? Tapos yung dx, what do you do with that? For dx, you divide both sides by e to the x, no? In this equation, para ma-isolate si dx. And ano mangyayari ngayon? You get now this one, all divided by e to the x. Okay? Pero in this current situation, we run into trouble, no? Kasi yung e to the x, that's not yet in terms of theta. Pero we can easily remedy that problem kasi yung e to the x natin, it's equal to 4 sine theta. So this is expressible in terms of theta. Right? The e to the x ngayon, it's 4 sine theta. All of this is in terms of theta. We can integrate ngayon. So let's cancel out 4 here and here. So we have here cosine theta times cosine theta. That's cosine squared theta. Divided by sine theta, that's sine squared theta. So your integrand now is cosine squared theta over sine squared theta d theta. Okay? Pero what's cosine squared theta over sine squared theta? That's cotangent squared theta, diba? Tapos this is similar to an example we did before where we have to replace this in terms of cosecant para ma-integrate natin siya. So let's do that. So si cotangent squared theta, this is now equal to cosecant squared theta minus 1. Tama ba? And then let's integrate term by term. So for cosecant squared theta, what's the antiderivative? It should be negative cotangent theta, no, if you recall. Kasi yung derivative again ni cotangent, it's negative cosecant squared. Okay? Kasi kaya may negative sign dyan. Okay? And then minus, what is the antiderivative rather of 1? It should be theta. Okay? So this is negative cotangent theta minus theta and then plus the arbitrary constant. And the last step to do now would be to express cotangent theta in terms of x, to express theta in terms of x. Okay? For theta, that's not such a big problem. Kasi remember, your e to the x, that's 4 sine theta. Tama ba? If you divide both sides by 4, you get sine theta equals e to the x all over 4. And then taking the inverse sine of both sides, you get theta equals sine inverse of e to the x all over 4. So your theta, it's now in terms of x. Okay na yan. On the other hand, for cotangent theta, again, there's nothing stopping you from using right triangles. You can do that. However, di ba ang cotangent theta, it's equal to cosine theta over sine theta. So you have sine theta over here. That's not a problem. Yung cosine theta, on the other hand, you can get that by using this equation here. Tama ba? So let's use that. Yung 4 cosine theta, diba that's equal to the square root of 16 minus e to the 2x. Okay? Excuse me. If you divide both sides by 4, you get cosine theta equals the square root of 16 minus e to the 2x all over 4. Okay? So you have now cosine theta, you have sine theta, you can get now cotangent theta in terms of these. So si cotangent theta, which is cosine theta over sine theta, yung cosine theta, it's equal to this one, no? So replace it with this. And then divided by sine theta, it's equal to e to the x over 4 ngayon. Okay? Tapos the 1/4 will cancel out here and then here. And then you're left now with the square root of 16 minus e to the 2x all over e to the x. Okay? So we're done. Yung cotangent theta natin ngayon, it's now expressible in terms of x. Okay? So yung antiderivative natin, which we computed to be equal to this one, in terms of x ngayon, you have negative cotangent theta to be the negative of this one. Okay? And then minus theta, it's equal to the sine inverse of this one, and then plus. And this one, it's now your antiderivative, and you're done. Let's end with this example, example number 6. So you have here the integral of this one. Now, yung kahawig na form niya is coming from this one, no? You have the square root of the ln squared of x minus 4. So in this case, your u here is ln x, no? And then minus, what is your a? Your a here is the square root of 4, which is 2. Okay? So using this u and this a, let's now introduce our trig sub. In this case, let's let u, which is ln of x, be equal to what? You have here variable squared minus constant squared. Ano yung trig function natin dito ngayon? It's secant. So your ln of x, it's now equal to 2 times the secant of theta. And then let's now look for dx and this one in terms of theta. So for dx, again, let us differentiate both sides of this equation, no? So if you differentiate ln of x, what do you get? You get 1 over x times the differential dx. So you get 1 over x dx on the left. On the right-hand side, when you differentiate, yung 2 lalabas. Yung derivative ng secant theta, that's secant theta tangent theta. So on the right, you get 2 secant theta tangent theta d theta. Okay, so that's now your dx in terms of theta. Okay? On the other hand, this radical expression over here, again, I will leave that to you. You can verify that this is equal to 2 tangent theta. Okay? This time yung kapartner ni secant dito is tangent, no? So always remember yung magkapartner ay sine and cosine, secant and tangent. Okay? Let's now use all of these substitutions to express this in terms of theta. In terms of theta, yung ln cubed of x, anong mangyayari dyan? So this is ln of x. If you cube ln of x, that corresponds to cubing this as well, no? Kasi they're equal. So if you take the cube of 2 secant theta, what do you get? 2 cubed is 8. Tama ba? And secant of theta, quantity cubed, that's now of course secant cubed of theta. Okay? So all in all, you get 8 times secant cubed of theta for the numerator. And then divided by this radical expression, square root of ln squared x minus 4. Diba that's equal to tangent theta times 2. Okay? So this one, that's now 2 tangent theta. Okay? So okay na to. Okay na to. Yung dx over x, that's just of course 1 over x dx. And 1 over x dx is equal to this one in terms of theta. So this one, that's equal to 2 secant theta tangent theta d theta. And then let's cancel out what needs to be cancelled out. So yung 2 magka-cancel out. Tapos yung tangent theta magka-cancel out. So ano matitira sa atin ngayon? Wala yung 2. So 8 na lang yung datanang constant dun sa integrand, no? Ilabas natin siya. Tapos yung matitirang functions dun sa loob ng integrand are what? So the tangent theta will cancel out. Yung matitira is secant cubed of theta times secant of theta. Their product is of course secant to the 4th of theta. Okay? You have 8 times secant to the 4th of theta d theta. And what do you have here now? You have here the integral of an even power of secant. Tama ba? So if you recall from trigonometric integrals, what do you do to integrate even powers of secant? Yung ginagawa natin is we split off a factor of secant squared theta d theta. Tama ba? And then for the remaining factors, we express them in terms of tangent. Okay? So let's do that for this particular example. You have here 8 times the integral of, again, we split up secant squared theta d theta, and then the remaining factors are just secant squared theta, of course. Okay? Tapos itong remaining factors natin, let us express them in terms of tangent. Okay? In particular, using identities, secant squared theta, diba, that's 1 plus tangent squared theta. You have here 8 times 1 plus tangent squared theta, and then let's leave this one as is. Okay? Tapos for this one, let's introduce a substitution. Let's let v be equal to tangent theta. If your v is tangent theta, what is dv? Your dv ngayon is now secant squared theta d theta. So kaya tayo nag-split off ng secant squared theta d theta, no? Para kapag nag-v substitution tayo, meron tayong dv na mailalabas. Okay? So we can express all of this now in terms of v. You have here 8. And then times si 1 plus tangent squared theta. Di ba si v ay tangent theta? So this one becomes v squared. We get here 1 plus v squared. Tapos itong secant squared theta d theta, that is of course dv. Okay? And this is not so hard anymore. You're just integrating now a polynomial function, no? We have again 8 sa labas. And then times what's the antiderivative of 1 in terms of v? That's just of course v, no? And then times 8, you get 8v. Okay? Tapos si v squared naman, it's a power of v, no? How do you integrate powers of v? Essentially, take v raised to the old exponent plus 1 divided by the old exponent plus 1 again. So in this case, you now have here v raised to your old exponent is 2 plus 1, you get 3. We get v cubed divided by that same new exponent, which is 3. Okay? So the antiderivative of this is now v cubed over 3 and then times 8. You get now 8v cubed over 3 and then plus c. Tapos back substitute in terms of tangent, you get here 8 tangent theta plus 8 tangent cubed of theta all over 3 and then plus c. Okay? Now what's our goal here? Our goal now here is to express tangent theta in terms of x. Tama ba? Now again, we can use right triangles, no, if you want. Pero take note, again, if you use our previous substitution, you can express tangent theta in terms of x by dividing both sides of this equation by 2. Okay? So let's do that. This is your equation in terms of tangent theta, no? If you divide by 2, you get tangent theta to be equal to this. Tama ba? And you're done, no? Kasi this is now your tangent theta in terms of x. So yung old integral natin in terms of theta is this one. Tapos if you now replace tangent theta with this one, for this one, you get 8 times this. Tama ba? Tapos for this second term here, you get 8 over 3 times the cube of this. So meron kayong 8 over 3 times 2 cubed sa baba. So meron kayong 1 over 8. Magka-cancel yung mga 8. And that leaves you with 1/3 only times this 1 cubed. Okay? So all in all, you get 8 times this one. And then plus, like what I mentioned, yung mga 8 magka-cancel, no? So you just get 3 here sa baba and then plus c. And that's it. This is now your antiderivative. Okay, so that concludes our discussion on trigonometric substitution. Para mas ma-practice kayo, I suggest you answer the end of slides exercises sa lecture video natin. Or if you want, you can answer the exercises in the module, no? There are so many. Okay? Just practice on your own. So, thanks for watching.